We're about to start 3 days of just exceptional science presentations, and I just want to take a few minutes at the beginning of all this to remind us all of the importance of this enterprise of psychological science that we are all in. When John Cacioppo was president of APS, he wrote a series of columns about psychological science as a hub discipline, meaning that in a whole set of analyses involving thousands of scientific journals and literally millions of scientific articles, psychological science emerged along with math and physics and chemistry as one of 7 core disciplines. And separately, John is one of those psychological scientists whose research has had such an enormous impact on how we understand important social issues. It's this kind of work that we should be showcasing more. It's quintessential psychological science, just the kind of research that makes us a hub. And when Walter Mischel was APS president, he heralded a coming golden age for psychological science, pointing to the many boundary-crossing developments of mind, brain, behavior, genetics, and so much more. And who better than Walter to predict a golden age, a giant in the field who for decades has led in making psychology more scientific. Still, it turns out that this was not just Walter talking. But I want to take this talk of hub science and a golden age to an even higher level, to say that it is our collective work in behavioral and psychological science writ large that is core to what we as humanity need in order to move forward as individuals, as family members, in our communities, our nation, our world. Human progress depends on what we as psychological scientists discover. What's more, we're being recognized in the public arena for just this aspect of what we do. And let me add, recognized at a level of sophistication that some of our most important popularizers think we need never water down. Yes, our messages about human behavior are complex. Human behavior is incredibly complex, but our messages get through. In the next few minutes, what I want to do is illustrate all this with a few, and really just a few, of what could be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples of good, solid psychological science that's having an impact. Much of it, I'm proud to say, began with publications in APS journals or through an APS initiative, but wherever it was first found, it is wonderful science that's being written about widely. Why? It's because there's a real and growing hunger for it. Huge numbers of the general public are reading our work, consuming our work, and in a way, and they're seeing it reported responsibly, and in a way I think should make most of us very proud. Here's just one example. The Huffington Post, which now tops all news sites with more than 35 million unique visitors a month, just created a science site. And APS's senior writer-in-residence, Ray Herbert, was invited to be a founding columnist. Now, I know what you're saying. Hey, Alan, maybe not all 35 million are reading about psychological science. Well, you know, you might be right. So let's say only 10 million are reading about it, or maybe that's only 5 million, or what if it's only 1 million? Okay, even forget 1 million. What if it's only 1%? That's still 350,000 people reading something specific about scientific psychology on a regular basis. That is really something. Ray's translation of psychological science engages the public. They come for the writing, they stay for the science. The result is that psychological science is getting noticed, certainly in the press, old and new, but also among those academics who write about the media. Just another sign of the importance of our discipline. Now, I know that everything about our science that gets the public attention is not world-shaking. I know our monograph saying that there's no good science behind online dating is not a cure for cancer. But it is relevant to how we live. And taken together with conclusions that come elsewhere from our journals, conclusions like, yes, there is a single best empirically supported way to teach children to read. You use phonemes when you teach kids to read. End of discussion. Or the conclusion that a lot of what now passes for treatment in disorders ranging from depression to anorexia to PTSD is not only just ineffective, but some commonly used therapies may even make conditions worse. Or the conclusion that self-esteem doesn't seem to matter very much. At least it doesn't predict much about things like drug abuse or juvenile delinquency or school grades. Or the conclusion that you're kidding yourself if you think that doing crossword puzzles is going to get you through old age intact. But our report finds that exercise just might. Or the conclusion that growing up speaking 2 languages, far from confusing you, changes the way you think for the better and just might get you a leg up on continuing to think well into your golden years. Or the conclusion that there's not much to the concept that some people are visual learners and others are auditory learners, and even less to the notion that you should match the learning environment to these learning styles. And by the way, check out how well this finding has spread. Taken together, these results, and really so many more I could name, all send the collective message that our discipline has an important impact on lives lived well, on better health and mental health, on public policy, and that's how it should be. To put it simply, psychological science is important. That's the reason to give when asked why psychology is the most popular major on just about every college and university campus, and why our classroom Wikipedia initiative to better define psychology has been so successful. Psychological science is important. That's the reason our recent special issue on psychology and law has been downloaded now over 150,000 times. We've got something important to say about legal issues like eyewitness testimony and how juries make decisions and how to interview children, on profiling, on competency to stand trial. Psychological science is important. That's why in our nation's science agencies over this last decade and a half, there has been the creation of the Social, Behavioral, and Economic Sciences Directorate at the National Science Foundation, the Board on Behavioral, Cognitive, and Sensory Sciences at the National Academy, and the creation of the Office of Behavioral and Social Sciences Research at the National Institutes of Health. And that's why NIH has also initiated a new program, the Opportunity Network for Basic Behavioral Science, known as OPNET, that's going to fund something like $120 to $140 million in fundamental behavioral research over the next 3 to 4 years. And that's why even in the last few months, we've continued to break new ground, working with Congress and the National Science Foundation to show that clinical psychological science has a basic side that's in keeping with the NSF mission. Psychological science is important. That's why we're having such an impact globally. One dramatic example is that APS was asked by the government of Qatar, the highest per capita income country in the world, to advise on a national research agenda. Qatar decided that social and behavioral science was going to be crucial to their future. Psychological science is important. That's why we're often asked for our reflections on public issues that are important to so many people. It's our research that's going to be critical for helping huge numbers of those in need. We're the ones with an in-depth knowledge about the subtle interplay among genes, the brain, drugs, behavior. Psychological science is important. And that's why sometimes we even get to make a serious point in a funny way. Yes, Steve, our research is powerful and important. And that's why even when there are questions about some aspect of what we do, we need to be strong in our support of our discipline. Psychological science is important. And that's why there's so many books these days about psychological science, and why so many books written by eminent psychological scientists are so popular. There's an enormous thirst out there for knowledge about what we do and more importantly, about how our work relates to all people in their everyday lives or in those special situations that we all go through from time to time. Experiences with loss, happiness, illness, our interactions with our children, our aging parents, our extended family, dealing with our careers, our environment, experiences with change. And these are not the kind of pop psychology self-help books that we know have questionable value, the kind that all too often make us cringe. No, these bestsellers are about our science, our discipline, our craft. They're about the experimental questions we ask, about the research we do, the answers we find, the discoveries we make. They are about the essence of how we all think and act as psychological scientists, and about what we want to pass on to our students and to our fellow citizens. Psychological science is important. Now, I know you don't need a lesson in why psychological and behavioral science is so important. You wouldn't be here if you did. But just for the sake of completeness, for closing the circle, take a second to consider the importance of behavior in everyday life as you look at these final slides. AIDS, behavior. Learning and literacy, behavior. Substance abuse, behavior. Heart disease, behavior. Violence, behavior. Cancer, behavior. Depression, teen pregnancy, workplace productivity, racism, terrorism, obesity, child abuse, behavior, 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 behavior. As a country, as a world, we need to know more about the science of behavior. And for us, that's psychological science. That's the public good we all want to promote, and that's why we should promote our discipline and continue to celebrate it. Psychological science is important. Thank you.